Hello there, and welcome to Doctor Who Radio Show. I'm That's The Way It Goes N9. Good to be back, and these gentlemen with me are, of course,
Tim Keep, better known as Beefhead,
and the other Tim,
and Jimmy, or Monk of Magnesia, or Monk.
And have we got some special stuff for you? In essence, although I suppose the location filming is slowly dripping, there are plenty of other things to know about the world of Who, well, the universe of Who, if you know where to look. So let's start with the earliest incarnation, which is John Hurt's Doctor has his own book series, starting with War Changes Everyone, Even the Doctor, Engines of War, George Mann, who also wrote An Apple a Day, An Apple a Day in the recent Tales of Trenzalore series, which basically filled in the blanks of the Doctor's times in the village of Christmas. And this is the same thing, showing us how the War Doctor becomes the Doctor that we see at the start of Day of the Doctor. And according to George Martin, who's written many Victorian steampunk novels, which is part of the Newbury and Hobbies series, we have a new companion, we have counterlating Time Lords, we have a new Dalek paradigm, whatever that means. It's a war story at its heart, set against the backdrop of a great turmoil and chaos, but it's also about the Doctor's personal journey, how he ends up where he is at the beginning of Day of the Doctor. He's been through the ringer, and in Engines of War he's not given any reprieve.
I think it's certainly something that needs to be seen. It's where we see the Doctor in the prequel, Night of the Doctor. You can see how the girl he goes to save completely recalls from him that the Time Lords are held in as much contempt as the Daleks.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be interesting to see his evolution, because when he goes through the transformation, he starts off as a young man. And by the time we meet him in Day of the Doctor, he's an old man. So, like you say, he's been through the ringer. He's seen the atrocities, and it's brought him to the point where he's prepared to execute a final solution. How much he's sick and tired of it all.
Final solution.
And like I said, he's a Doctor that never had the chance just to go around and have fun like all the other Doctors have done. I mean, they have random adventures here and there with whoever that happens to be hanging out with them. This guy doesn't have that opportunity. He's too busy trying to maintain this war thing that's going on forever and ever and ever between the two sides. And I'm guessing this book will take you where he comes to the point where I'm going to just end this.
Does he call does he call himself the War Doctor throughout the book?
No, he probably just calls himself the Doctor, but what he says in the episode though is that he doesn't even use that name anymore because he no longer feels like he's the Doctor.
Yeah.
He is so not himself. He's been pushed into that corner where he can't be himself anymore.
In that little prequel, he renounced the name. He said, "I'm not the Doctor anymore. I can't use that." So I was wondering what he calls himself in this book.
Well, I presume just the War Doctor or something. I don't know that. It didn't actually say, but maybe that's the mystery of it all.
I wonder what his companion calls him. Does his companion call him War Doctor every time the companion wants to talk to him, or WD, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. There have been novels where the Infinity Doctors, I think it is. I might be wrong, but there was a novel where it was an unknown, unseen regeneration of the Doctor, who'd never left Gallifrey or something like that. So it has the traits of being the Doctor, just he doesn't call himself the Doctor. So perhaps that's the same as with this series of stories. Because as Tim pointed out, he didn't have the luxury of enjoying himself in his persona. So it was like in the classic series where the Doctor had been sent off to carry out missions on, Genesis of the Daleks and Brain and Morbius, that sort of thing. And unofficially, so he's doing the dirty work for the Time Lords, but it's all sort of stumm,
I'm guessing the book will address whatever breaking point he faces to where he finally decides he's going to use that weapon he's got that he stole from the Time Lords the moment. So I'm guessing that's what the book's going to address.
If this is a series, it may not get that far in the War Doctor's life.
But maybe you may see something more of the Time Lords, and that he starts off doing their wet work, and how he does become, embittered with it and jaded and disdainful of his own race.
The book's to be released July 31st. You can order it through Amazon, but you won't get it until August, unless they have a Kindle edition.
They probably will have an ebook floating around.
There was, of course, those novels as part of the sort of classic Doctor, past Doctors, where the second Doctor is seen doing his missions that fit in between the end of the War Games and Spearhead in space,
or even on the show, the episode The Two Doctors.
And that's probably how it's the sort of same thing, really. But you see, that was where he had a choice to a certain extent. Although I suppose he didn't even then, because the idea behind that was that you'd have season
6B.
What was it? 6B, yes.
Yeah,
6B.
I don't think that really holds up. I think it's just more of the fact that, like, they mentioned they dropped Victoria off somewhere, so they're supposed to be the same age that they were however many years ago when they were in the Two Doctors. So it's just him and Jamie.
Even though they didn't look it, but
right. But I mean, that's understandable.
He gets a new TARDIS in those novels. Terrence Dicks, I think, wrote them. And he's sent on missions and all sorts. He's allowed to have Jamie again, and explains why Victoria wasn't with him. That was just a false memory. So the bit where at the start of the Two Doctors, where he said she's gone to learn so and so, but I've no idea why she wants to learn so and so. He was saying that for the benefit of Jamie, apparently. So Jamie thinks Victoria's done that, but in reality they've just been put together by the Celestial Interventions Agency,
so you're saying
which is really time travel CIA.
That line of thought. Oh, okay, I wasn't aware of that.
World Game and Players, that's years and years ago. That was part of the Virgin
Missing
Doctor Who novels.
Oh, okay.
Missing Adventures type thing. Because you had the main sort of 7th Doctor thing, and then you had all the past Doctors stories. Because Steven Moffat and Mark Gatiss, years and years ago, wrote for them. Virtually all the new series people at one point contributed, and that's the same premise. For one reason or another, he's been forced. So there's no slinking off. At the end of the adventure, he has to do it. But with this, instead of just being, under duress by the Time Lords, it's everywhere. He's basically, it's 100 years since World War One, so Engines of War is rather apt. The whole War Doctor thing is basically a reluctant soldier,
Yeah. But that's it. But the thing is, even though he renounces the name, he obviously has the opportunity to flee and run away and hide, but he doesn't, because he tries to make the best of the bad situation and protect what innocent parties he can. So despite renouncing the name, he's still, to a certain extent, holding up with the ideals, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's by only meeting his future selves. That was the point, wasn't it? It was only by meeting them that he was able to not use his weapon and end up saving those innocent people he was trying to save.
Right. Because if he didn't meet them, he would have used the weapon. He would have used the weapon.
Well, moving on to a later Doctor, this being the next Doctor, Christopher Eccelson. There has been news regarding a proper explanation for why Christopher Eccelson very briefly appeared. In Day of the Doctor, of course, you see John Hurt's Doctor finally regenerating into the 9th Doctor. In the BBC version, you see vaguely sort of hints of, Christopher Eccleston's face, but an enterprising Doctor Who fan created a YouTube video where you actually see it properly, i.e. his full face, which is ironic because actually the BBC could have done that anyway. But on Steven Moffat has this column in Doctor Who magazine, the latest issue, which is 473, just released, and he answers questions of fans, and one of them is this from Josh O'Dara. What was the reason for not including more of Christopher Eccleston's features in John Hurt's regeneration into Eccleston? And this is his reply, which left me sort of staggered. Human decency. It was one thing to include him among all the other archive doctors as they flew in to save the day. In fact, it would have been disgraceful to have left anyone out. But placing him in the scene might have given the impression he'd actually turned up for filming, which would have been crossing the line. Not taking part in the 50th was a difficult decision for Chris, taken after a lot of thought and with great courtesy, and not respecting his wishes would have been grossly unprofessional and disrespectful to a good man and a great doctor. Number 9 may not have turned up for the celebration, but there would have been no party without him. Bollocks! Utter bullshit. What a load of old shit. He's basically trying to suggest that he didn't appear properly, just for a few seconds with his face, in the regeneration scene, because it would have been disrespectful to Christopher Eccelson. No, it wouldn't.
It just seems to be a sort of very non-committal answer either way. It sounds like a sideways slight, but it's in saying, "Oh well, he didn't show up," but then in the same breath, he's trying to really suck up to him. There's no way they could have not used archive footage and just done something like that.
When he said people might think he showed up for filming, well, so what? So what if people thought he showed up for filming? I think he's saying people might have thought he showed up for filming, and then we would have to pay him extra.
I don't know about that.
That's more of the reason, isn't it?
I think the whole reason that we got the story that we did was because it was written. They did ask Eccleston to come back, and when he made it clear he wasn't going to come back for this episode, that's what led him to write the one he did. So I mean, it's neither here nor there. I mean, yeah, it sounds like a bullshit story he's making up now to say, well, that's why we didn't do that. But I don't know. I never liked the idea of trying to fill in all the gaps anyway. Like having John Hurt turn into Eccleston. Maybe he turned into somebody else. Maybe there's another doctor in there. Who knows? So, I mean, that doesn't add up really. But that's why I never really wanted to see them again, regeneration.
Maybe he's trying to not screw the pooch in one respect as well, because he's going to try and get him back at a later date, whether he shows up or not. You never know.
You never know.
You know those extra seconds where if they show his whole face, they have actually slowed the pacing of the story down. It may have just edited it there to keep the story moving.
There's no reason why, if a YouTube fan could create the same thing, that they couldn't have done it.
I was really surprised that they even went that far with it, and they showed him regenerating. I just thought that the doctor that he was going to take off, and that was going to be that. And when they showed him starting to change,
there was no reason for killed. What was it? Old age that suddenly hit him? Unnatural causes. There was no reason for him to regenerate.
Well, I think the feeling is that he was that far gone, old, dead, and tired that he accomplished his mission with his future self, and now it was okay now to let it go, right? Like maybe he's holding it back. Maybe he was holding it back for years, like Tennant did.
He didn't give the impression that he was weak and frail.
It was a potpourri of my body's wearing thin, and also a bit like he was finally leaping out, like Sam Beckett finally changes history for the better. He finally gets his reward of being released to somewhere else. Yeah. But Custurbers.com pointed out that it was a rather diplomatic response, because the suggestion is now that the reason Christopher Eccelson left in the first place was because of he didn't like, and this has been mentioned by other people from real Whovian casts, including Joe, Matrix Lord 212, that he didn't like the bullying on set particularly. So he may have thought, well, I don't really want to go back to no matter how much money I'm offered, if it's still like that.
It probably isn't like that. That was their first year, and they really didn't know what they were doing. They were trying to bring back something. They had no idea they were going to be successful. So, I mean, I'm guessing that, yeah, he saw a lot. He had a bad experience doing it, I guess. But even in interviews after the fact, he always said, I'm glad I brought this show back with them, and I left it for other people to carry on.
The reports were the reason he didn't want to do the 50th is he looked at the script and he didn't think his doctor, the ninth doctor, he didn't think his doctor would destroy Gallifrey. And Moffat said he agreed with him, but he didn't know how else to write it. So
I'm pretty sure
I don't want to play it.
I'm pretty sure that they didn't write the script until they knew who was going to be in it. They had to lock that in first. I'm pretty sure that you have to make sure that actor can be there before you can write for him.
Yeah, they'd have a skeleton of a story, I would suppose, and then they'd just throw the people in.
But even Moffat said the same thing, that he can't see any of these 11 doctors doing that, and that's why he had to create another one. He had to create a situation, and I think also he knew going in that I'm not going to do another year, so that's why he set it all up for the regeneration cancellation crisis, whatever, like to get rid of that problem of the 13. So I'm pretty sure that's why all that was worked in there, and he knew that was after the fact when Eccelson said no, and that Smith said he was leaving. I'm pretty sure all those things were in play.
I do feel the 50th anniversary wasn't terribly well handled, personally.
Really?
Everything was rushed. As soon as I just get this distinct feeling that a lot of it wasn't handled very well. Casting, not getting Christopher Eccelson into it. The fact that you have David Doctor and then you have time of the Doctor, so the Doctor who's just celebrated being the most, the new model or recent model, as the second Doctor put it, then becomes the X model in the next story. And this whole thing of him basically, his future self basically giving him a false memory is a bit like, the idea of the Time Lords giving Jamie a false memory. So all along, the whole plot line of the Doctor destroying Gallifrey never actually happened, technically. So,
but isn't that a good thing? I think that was the point.
Well, it was for the Time Lords, but that essentially made something that had been part of the mythology since the new series came back. Well, not the new series came back, the old series came back as the new series. That basically made it all cobblers, really.
Not necessarily, though. You can still watch it, and it's for what it is. Yeah, they've rewritten time again, but they do that all the time, don't they? That's the whole point. If he hadn't have done that in Day of the Doctor, then they wouldn't have been there to help him in Time of the Doctor. I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do anything for him. They would have been dead. So, I mean, in other words, they changed. They do this all the time now with the show, and it doesn't mean you can't go back and start over again with Rose and enjoy the episodes, even though this Doctor thinks he's done this terrible deed, and we know later that he didn't. But I mean, you can still watch and enjoy it. I mean, that was still who Eccelson was, the guy that did it, or one of the guys that did it, the guy that was guilty for it, just like Tennant was. Tennant was guilty for it. Smith tried to forget about it. So I mean, it doesn't take anything away that they changed what they did. I
had a horrible thought though, because the strange thing is, it's almost like that cliche of going back in time and changing, a reset button. That's what it is, almost a reset button, when it shouldn't have been a reset button at all. So,
I wouldn't necessarily say it was a reset button, though.
Well, it has reset it because it's a resetting somebody's memory type thing.
No, the only thing that's different is that the Doctor, he regenerated it. He's got a new bunch of them now. He doesn't have to worry about running out anymore, and he may or may not decide to check in with Gallifrey. I mean, that's the only difference as far as the show going forward is. It's all there to be done.
Cool.
What's up, Brian?
What's up?
Hello, Brian.
How you doing?
Actually, I'll ask you this next question, Brian. You've heard recently that Matt Smith is to be in the new, whatever it's called, Terminator film. Any thoughts on that at all?
Terminator Genesis, I believe.
Ah, Genesis. Bit ironic.
I think it's awesome.
Cool.
I just wonder, I just wonder, like, I just want to know, like, who's he playing and what's his, like, main role.
Not a Terminator, presumably. The guy who created the Terminator, perhaps, or sent it back in time originally, or...
I think his role's going to be significant, whatever it is, and I think it's good to see him finally making that crossover. Because he's doing that. Is it How to Make a Monster? Is his other film that he's got in production? That's filmed and in post production, but it's now Karen Gillan's made that big move over, and it's, with the exception, I suppose, of Christopher Eccelson, who had a pre-existing movie career before he did The Doctor. We're now seeing someone who's gone from Doctor Who evolving beyond it. So it's going to be interesting to see how he goes.
Oh, there's lots of people from Doctor Who appearing in big budget films. They've all appeared in science fiction ones, but I think really out of all of these films, yes, David Tennant appeared in the remake of Fright Night, which was
that was a box office bomb.
I think his role was a bit. Ugh. I thought Colin Farrell was way better than that. Then you got these examples: Christopher Eccelson in 4-2. But really, out of all of them, Terminator is the biggest franchise. That's the big money spinner, really.
And he's going to be in the next. He's going to be in this one and the next two Terminators. So his character is significant since it's coming back, and it's going to have a larger role in the next two movies than it does in this one. Whatever his character is, they didn't say who he's playing, just that it's a significant character and will have a larger role in the next two Terminator films.
But once again, like we always discuss, aren't they jumping ahead of themselves? I mean, they don't even know if the first one's going to do well, are they? I mean, what if it flops? Are they going to really throw two movies after it? I mean, why do they keep doing this? They plan all these movies out, like the next 18 Spider-Mans. We've got them locked in, and it's just like, really?
Shit, yeah. They've got planned films to 2018 or something, haven't they?
I just don't know how you can plan a sequel when you don't even know how your first one's going to do. What if it flops? What if nobody goes to see it?
Easy though. It's all to do with one simple explanation: greed. Usually, that's why they want to. That's all it is now. Just sort of film series. They're not really bothered about something original, as long as it ka-ching type thing.
I think I think that's it. Like the size of the franchise that's gone before, rather than trying to start some. They're going to try and work on the strength of what's gone before. I suppose that's the only way you can look at it.
So here's a good question.
They tried to start something with John Carter of Mars. Yeah.
Here's a good question for all of you. Out of the following people, who do you think is going to have a successful, big-time career in Hollywood? David Tennant, Karen Gillan, Christopher Eccelson, or Matt Smith? Out of the four of them.
Karen Gillan.
Why is that, Brian? Why do you think so?
I don't know. I just because it's she listed, I think, more movies than either of them.
I can agree with Brian and tell you that it's because, first of all, she's a young lady, so she can get pretty much any role she wants right now. Now, give it 20 years, she won't have that luxury. Secondly, she's already on her way. I mean, she's got a head start, not really on David Tennant, but Tennant had hoped for that, and that hasn't happened for him. He left the show, 4 years ago, and he's tried, but he hasn't had much success. He does a lot of BBC now, a lot of television. So, and
theatre
Smith,
work,
and theater too, yeah. It's early days for Smith yet. I mean, We have to see what he can do. But I would put my money on her at this point, because Owen Eccleston's already been there, done that. I mean, he's never going to be a Hollywood star, but he's already proven himself as before he got into Doctor Who. He's got nothing to prove.
It's interesting with Eccleston though, because the thing is, he's always been very selective about what he's done. But in recent years, he's gone for more of the big blockbusters. So he's Thor 2, G.I. Joe. I'm surprised he signed onto something. I'm surprised he signed onto something like that. If you look at his previous body of work and everything like that. So
Well, at the end of that film, he went from being the villain to the villain's henchman. Yeah, and that gave the suggestion that they intended a whole series of it.
I think Billie Piper. I think by the time she finished on, by the time she was finished on Doctor Who, I think she was already married, had a kid, and already had sort of like her own personal commitments. Whereas someone like you were just saying, Karen Gillan, she's young, she's unattached and unburdened by children. So
unburdened by children.
Yeah, I mean that's why she's already out there, and people are going to remember her when they see Guardians of the Galaxy. They can say, "Hey, isn't that Doctor Who girl?" And she's had a couple others like Oculus recently, and so she's already out there doing stuff. So
yeah, she's got like 3 movies in the listing right now to be coming out.
So you think that's going to sort of help her break away from the stereotype of being that girl who used to be Matt Smith?
Well, she's not typecast at all, whereas Tennant and Smith are always going to run into that typecast. Do we want this guy who's Doctor Who? I mean, we don't want people to think of Doctor Who with his part. The easiest way to get around that is playing villains, if you can. I mean, I would think so. Smith, we haven't seen this movie he worked on in the middle. What was it? How to be a monster? Which one?
How to Catch a Monster? Yeah.
Yeah, and he's obviously the bad guy in that. So it'll be interesting to see how he performs in that, and how it's accepted by the movie going public.
Yeah, I think you're very right there. I think that's it. If you play a villain, it takes away your association with what's gone before, because as a villain you have the opportunity to really ham it up to a certain extent, chew the scenery.
It's always more fun.
And that's it. That's what Christopher Eccleston's done in his movie roles, and why you do think he's got this separate entity to Doctor Who.
Well,
whereas I think with David Tennant, he's been nice. He's been the friendly, cuddly guy all the way along.
Well, Smith was rung up for that How to Catch a Monster personally. So I think that's perhaps the difference. I get the impression that Tennant is going to become a TV doctor, doing TV stuff, because he's done Broadchurch, and he's actually appearing in the US version of that as well, which is a bit strange. Then you got Eccleston. I don't think he minds too much what he does, but he's probably picky. I think Smith is more happy to do a series of films. And Karen Gillan, I think, will probably have the most varied sort of career out of all of them.
I think she'll have the most commercially successful. I think Matt Smith's quite interesting though. That when he said he was going to be doing the stage run of American Psycho, if you were thinking casting wise, you would not have put him in that role prior to him doing it. So I think it will be interesting to see which way he takes himself. He's going to do 3 Terminator films. That's just going to give him pretty open scope, I think.
I would hope so.
Well, it's the same as Andrew Garfield then, isn't it, really? He's doing several other popular, already established franchise that's basically Terminator's been rebooted once already, or something like that. And they're both British, English, which is weird.
I think Garfield was lucky though, because he wasn't he in The Social Network as well?
Yeah.
And that was a sleeper hit, really, wasn't it?
He stood out in that film quite a bit. Distinctive sort of actor type thing. And the other guy who played the Facebook creator, his career seemed to sort of petered out a little bit.
Yeah, his roles have been middling. Jesse Eisenberg, is it, or something?
Yeah, Jesse Eisenberg.
Yes.
He was in the film Now You See Me.
Yeah, but he was also rumoured to be Lex Luthor in Batman vs Superman as well. So yeah,
he is going to be Lex Luthor.
Has already been cast. That's why lots of fans sort of had a bit of dismay that he was a bit, well, according to them, he was a bit too, young.
Which I think is a stupid decision for Lex Luthor, because I absolutely do not see him as Lex Luthor.
Yeah, he doesn't have the.
He's too young.
He's too young, and he doesn't have the stature. It's like casting the Doctor. You need the right sort of, the right actor that fits in, type thing.
I would agree with that, because if you look at the character of Lex Luthor was supposedly a defender of the planet, and in essence an allegory to a sort of supremacist type thing. So yeah, I don't think he will have the age to bear that sort of resentment.
They're gonna change the whole character too, because what I've heard, they're gonna make this Lex Luthor like a sort of a street fighter type of Lex Luthor, like where he grew up off the streets and everything.
Off the streets. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up this Doctor Who radio show. Thank you for everyone joining me. Tim Wells, wherever he's gone to, and Monk. Thank you to BFed.
Thank you. Pleasure as always.
And also thank you to Brian. Sorry you sort of came at the end of the show, but it'll be interesting when it's uploaded. And we've gone through all the Doctors, well, the last few Doctors War, 9 and 11, and who seems to be going from strength to strength. Could be an even bigger star than he was in Doctor Who. But until next time, keep hooing.